the city of Oakland, California, where they have Oaksterdam, it's called. They have a marijuana growing college and teach people how to grow medical marijuana and how to operate dispensaries and all that. Right. Well, I mean, they're basically paying for. Well, they passed a law where they're actually allowed to tax that now. Right. And so this tax is actually paying for basic city services for a very bad economic situation for Oakland. So. Right.
And speaking of medical marijuana, I mean, and you guys are well versed in some of the benefits of it. I mean, medical marijuana is, you know, potentially has huge medical benefits, therapeutic for. I know one is if you are suffering from cancer, have chemotherapy, it can help you eat. You know, and what are some of the other? It's
a painkiller. It's an anti-nauseant. It's a sleep suppressant.
Right.
It also reduces intraocular eye pressure for glaucoma, which is one of the best sources of it.
Yeah, it has a lot of good uses. One other interesting thing I was just reading, it said that a recent U.S. Department of Health survey this year said 100 million Americans report having tried marijuana or using it, and that's 41% of us. So, I mean, that's a huge proportion of the public that's at least tried it. So.
And also, you have to understand, a lot of people may not answer truthfully on a poll like that. I mean, when someone's coming up to your house with a clipboard, do you smoke marijuana? A lot of people don't necessarily tell the truth, so it could be actually a lot higher than that.
And that widespread use has also led to, like, what the FBI just released their statistics in the Uniform Crime Report, saying, you know, that there are again about 850,000 Americans this past year arrested in 2008 for marijuana offenses, and 90% was for possession, 10% was for sales. But I mean, it's hitting home with everybody across the U.S. because it's taking the place of 50% of all drug offenses that people are arrested for, and it's hitting home with people. They're seeing this, and they're definitely saying this is unjust, and that you're targeting such a large group of us Americans, and that is something that should be changed.
If I could just make a quick assertion, we've been talking about the legalization of marijuana. As I personally am a proponent of that, but as an alternative, I just recently read a report from the Cato Institute in Washington about the decriminalization policies in Portugal.
Right.
They've actually had huge success in Portugal. They're sort of setting a precedent for the EU, but they decriminalize all drugs, not just marijuana, and they've seen significant declines in the usage rates of pretty much all drugs across the board. Specifically in the age group from 15 to 19, which most drug policy analysts think is the critical age where people become lifetime users if they're likely to do so.
Right. I was wanting to bring up this Portugal issue. You know, Portugal did decriminalize minor possession of all drugs. They also, in addition to that, the Cato study also said that it reduced drug-related pathologies like STDs and deaths due to drug usage. They also say that these policy experts are saying these positive trends in Portugal are due to the enhanced treatment programs that are made possible by decriminalization. So instead of throwing people in jail, I mean, we could be rehabilitating, creating programs, education programs.
And it's usually so much cheaper to do that, you know, rather than incarcerate somebody up to upwards of $40,000 per year. You know, rehabilitation is usually so much cheaper than that. And to give them the help they really need. Another couple of countries that have changed laws recently, Mexico decriminalized small amounts of drugs last year. And, well, it just passed. I mean, the president signed it into law, Calderon signed it into law. But that's small amounts of drugs, including ecstasy, heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, and marijuana. Argentina also recently has, I believe, decriminalized marijuana as well.
I think Colombia was on that list as well. They decriminalized marijuana and cocaine.
With Argentina, the Supreme Court actually stepped in on a case, and with the Supreme Court decision was completely unanimous that the laws for making marijuana a criminal offense in Argentina were unconstitutional, and the Supreme Court did step in, and now, you know, it's the law of the land. In Argentina, marijuana will be decriminalized, in at least small personal amounts. And I think this is a human rights issue all over the world, the drug war.
There's another interesting thing I was wanting to bring up. I was reading this paper that said that strict laws actually don't reduce use. I mean, that's sort of the argument, is that we have these strict laws in America and that's going to reduce use. But evidence shows that that's not the case. We're actually seeing a World Health Organization report in 2008 examined 17 countries and found that the U.S. despite its harsh drug policies, harsher than most of the other countries, has one of the highest levels of drug use in the world. So we're seeing that these strict drug laws actually don't do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, along those same lines, I read in the same report on Portugal's decriminalization laws. Actually, here in the United States, we have the highest rate of cocaine use, higher than Colombia, which in my mind, I don't know about you guys, I always associate with cocaine. It's one of the largest coca producing regions. Something like 47% of Americans have admitted to using cocaine at least once. Like, that's mind-blowing to me in a country where it's so strictly prohibited that we still have the highest use of hard drugs, not just soft drugs.
It's not reducing availability, and all it's creating is that we have 25% of the world's prisoners here in the land of the free.
Yeah, I was wanting to bring that up too. Yeah.
And these other countries are starting to have reform in this area, and they're actually, I mean, we shouldn't find it surprising that these countries are having actually lower rates of drug use after they're passing these decriminalization and legalization measures. And it's not surprising because, like, our Center for Disease Control has shown that through an education campaign for cigarette smoking over since the 1960s, past 40, 50 years, we've cut cigarette smoking in half.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly, through education.
Through education.
And that's 25% of the world's prisoners, but we only equate for 5% of the world's population. So it's completely disproportionate.
I was going to bring up some of the statistics. It says in 2007, America, we have the highest incarceration rate. We're ahead of China, and we have a record 17 million people behind bars on probation or parole, with 2.3 million incarcerated. So that's 1 out of every 100 Americans. And if you compare that to China, which is a dictatorship with really bad human rights records, we actually have, they only have 18% of the incarceration rate that we do. So it's really amazing that America, you know, would be more draconian than China in some way.
When we're supposed to be the ones setting the example.
Right.
Well, you have to understand this is our drug war. We've been setting the policy across the globe on you know, we won't even deal with countries if they're not at least following us in some way in this drug war. And I think the war could end here in the United States, all over the world very quickly if we had a policy change here.
Right, yeah, and I was reading something that since 1980, when the drug war was really taken off a lot, we've actually quadrupled our prison population since 1980. So we have 4 times as many people in prison. And there's an interesting graph I was looking at. So, and this relates to alcohol prohibition. When alcohol was prohibited, we saw murder rates and violent crimes go way up. And then after prohibition was ended, we saw crime rates go down. We're seeing the same trend with the war on drugs. We saw murder rates and other violent crimes going up when we started harsh drug laws, and we're still seeing them go up. And so the argument becomes is that we could have a more peaceful, less violent society if we really ended the drug war in a lot of ways. And so we're actually creating violence in our society by our drug laws, and I think a lot of people don't make that connection.
Especially with all the turmoil going on in Mexico, that's definitely analogous to, you know, the Al Capones of the 30s with alcohol prohibition.
Right. I mean, this year alone, 4,000 people have died in Mexico due to the drug cartels.
This is our demand that's fueling that in Mexico. Mexicans don't have the wealth to have that kind of demand for drugs. This is all these drugs are going to Americans, and we are fueling the drug war. You have a situation in Mexico where you have two cartels that are more powerful than the Mexican government. They have their own personal armies. I mean, this is the Wild West down there right now, and we've completely destabilized that country through our drug war.
So essentially our drug laws are creating this massive black market you know, funding for organized crimes and gangs. So we're essentially, I mean, we could potentially eliminate or reduce cartels and gangs if we changed our drug laws as well. I mean,
instead of responding to the real problem, we're just imprisoning people. And one of the saddest, most really, I mean, truly depressing statistics that I've read is that we spend 10 times more incarcerating children, people under the age of 18, than we do educating them. That right there just, I mean, that should stand out to anybody as insane.
Yeah. Something